Two more Singaporeans have been issued with ROs under the Internal Security Act. For terrorism-related activities, both were self-radicalized online. The trigger was the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. One is a 14-year-old student. Worryingly, he's the youngest ISA case to date. And it took only a few months for him to be radicalized. He looked online for information on the conflict, and then he began to support Hamas and other militant groups. And he wanted to fight for the Black Flag Army, BFA, and die as a martyr. And he started preparing himself to join the BFA. And he thought if he could not travel to join the BFA, he was willing to attack targets in Singapore on BFA's instructions. And he also thought about attacking non-Muslims in Singapore during festivals like Chinese New Year, Christmas, Deepavali, because he considered them un-Islamic. He also tried to radicalize some of his schoolmates, but was unsuccessful. ISD intervened early before he could go further. The second is Anadia Anad. She is 33 years old. She is the second person issued with an order now. She's a former public servant. She was also triggered by the Israel-Hamas conflict. Anadia had come to attention before. And during the latest conflict, she came across a group called the Axis of Resistance, AOR. She began to support AOR. She supported the attacks against Israel and Israel's allies, including civilians. She also advocated for violence. She was the administrator of a social media channel, and the channel glorified AOR's military operations. She was not successful in getting her family and friends to join the channel. And Anadia was aware that her online activities were unlawful, not acceptable for a public servant, so she hid her extremist views and activities from her colleagues. Her support for AOR's violence, her spreading of propaganda to promote their cause, was a cause for concern and a security risk. So restriction orders under ISA have been issued against both. No detention. The restriction orders mean that they cannot engage in some activities. I would say ISD has done excellent work. You can see the two cases show that overseas conflicts can affect us internally. You can also see the risk of extremist narratives. They threaten our own national security and social harmony. Singaporeans are deeply concerned about the situation in Gaza, and rightly so. It is a serious situation. Thousands of innocent lives lost. It's a massive humanitarian crisis affecting the Palestinians, and many of us sympathize with the Palestinian cause. I sympathize with the Palestinian cause. They should have their own country and not suffer like this. And you have seen the government's position on the Gaza crisis and Singapore's recent vote at the UN on Palestinian statehood. But sympathy for any foreign cause cannot mean we can support or allow terrorism. Action was taken against a young boy and Anadia, not because they supported Palestine. As I said, many of us are deeply affected by the plight of Palestinians, and we show our support in concrete ways. We have organized fundraising, sending of humanitarian aid, and Singapore has taken a clear position internationally in international organizations. But action was taken against the two of them because of their support for armed violence. And in the case of the young boy, because also that he was prepared to engage in armed violence himself. We have to, I think, continue to deal with self-radicalization in Singapore, like many other places in the world. Those radicalized are getting younger. This is a global trend. We have seen several cases around the world of armed violence by self-radicalized young people. Recently in Sydney, in London, you've seen young boys being picked up. In Singapore, 40 self-radicalized Singaporeans have been dealt with under the ISA since 2015, and 13 were aged 20 or under, so you can see for yourself. ISD will continue to work with community partners. We try and intensify our outreach efforts to counter youth radicalization. So anyone, regardless of age, gender, religion, or profession, can be radicalized. And both these cases involve individuals with different profiles. One was a young boy, student. The other was an adult who should have been more aware of the dangers of radicalization. Yet she was also vulnerable. So an ISD will take action against anyone in Singapore who supports, promotes, or makes preparations to take up armed violence, regardless of how they rationalize that violence and regardless of where the violence takes place.